Warning, what I'm about to show might contain some graphic images, so it's not suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello everyone, I am Erin with Maha Moms, formerly known as Save PV Schools. Today's hot topic is old news, but still relevant news because people are still talking about the editorial published in the Palos Verdes High School yearbook in 2024 titled, "Whose Land Is It Anyway? A New Perspective on Israel and Palestine." It is still relevant today because there's been a terrifying rise in anti-Semitism, political violence, and violent extremists attacking Jewish students on college campuses, violent extremists blocking synagogues, and most terrifying is children were gunned down while praying at a church in America. We're in a most unholy war. As for the anti-Semitic editorial published in 2024, it brought Palos Verdes under the national public eye and caused a lot of pain and suffering for the Jewish community in Palos Verdes. Sadly, there was no resolution because half the community didn't know what was so wrong with the editorial, and more shockingly, people from our community showed up to defend the student who wrote it and oddly to praise Saradine, a PVPUSD school board member who was running for California State Assembly. Why were they praising Saradine? They were sympathetic towards her because she is a Muslim, and they felt the editorial represented them because they harbor antagonistic sentiments against Israel and against America. My intention in sharing today is to speak as an American patriot, meaning I love America. I intend to offer more clarity, understanding, and enlightenment. So if all goes well, you will learn why the editorial is anti-Semitic, anti-American, and why it should have never been allowed to go to print. The editorial could serve as a valuable teaching opportunity if only teachers knew enough to go through it line by line with a red pen and mark everything that's false so the students can learn the truth and correct their mistakes. To understand why the editorial was so bad, people need some context about Hamas and the war on terror. First, let's answer the question, who is Hamas? Hamas is part of a global Islamic resistance movement. They are a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood dedicated to jihad. They are terrorists who control Gaza. Hamas was formed in 1987 after the First Intifada, a rebellious, violent uprising against Israel. Hamas signed the 1988 charter called the Covenant of the Islamic Resistance. In it, they lay out their agenda to kill all of the Jews and conquer Israel. According to their covenant, it reads, "Ye are the best nation," referring to the nation of Islam. "Yea, command that which is just. Yea, believe in Allah." The Hamas covenant is an agreement that violent extremists made amongst themselves to destroy Israel. The covenant states, Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. That is Hamas's mission, to obliterate Israel, to kill all of the Jews. So when you hear people chant, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," that's what they mean, obliterate Israel. The Hamas covenant goes on to praise Allah and asks for Allah's assistance to, again, kill all of the Jews. Article 2 states, quote, "The Islamic resistance movement is one of the wings of the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. It is characterized by its deep understanding and embrace of all Islamic concepts of life, culture, creed, politics, economics, education, society, justice, judgment, the spreading of Islam, art, information, science of the occult, and conversion to Islam." That is their goal. That is very important for people to understand. This is how America is different than countries run by an Islamic regime. November 7th, 2023, Hamas murdered 1,200 innocent young men and women who were dancing at the Nova Music Festival in Israel. Israel is a nation much like America where they have religious freedom. And nova means a star showing a sudden explosion of light. And on October 7th, 2023, Hamas attempted to drown out the light in Israel. 46 Americans were murdered that day. Hamas took 254 hostages. Among them were 12 American hostages. To this day, over 2 years later, Hamas has refused to return 48 hostages. There is ample evidence from witness testimonies, first responders, and a United Nations fact-finding mission indicating Hamas militants used sexual violence, including rape and gang rape, as a weapon of war against the women and young girls who were held in captivity. The hostages were caged in underground tunnels that Hamas had built from years of funding given to them by Qatar and Iran. Iran provides $100 million annually to fund Hamas. They also receive private donations from Turkey, Kuwait, Malaysia, all Muslim majority countries. Hamas has controlled the people living in Gaza for over 20 years. The United Nations has referred to it as an open-air prison. Hamas could have saved the people of Gaza by returning the hostages, but they refused to negotiate with Israel. In the editorial, whose land is it anyway? The author fails to give the perspective of what the land of Gaza is like. There's no mention of the dire conditions that have existed there for the war criminals who started the war. And there's no understanding of why so many Palestinians have been caught in the crossfires between Hamas and Israel. So let's talk about it. Whose land is it anyway? The correct perspective on Israel and Palestine. Israel belongs to Israel. Israel is their land. And this is what's wrong with the editorial. Number one, the editorial is anti-Semitic. The word anti-Semitism means hostility to and prejudice against the Jewish people. It is a form of racism, specifically targeting Jewish people. I don't think the author of the editorial had any intention to spread racism, and the true culprit in this is ignorance. And the only cure for ignorance is education. So that's what we're doing now. Number two, the editorial completely neglected to mention the Holocaust. And this is why members of our community like Joan Davidson, Jeremy Vanderhall, and Barry Udis continued to go to school board meetings and urge the board to develop better curriculum to teach the students. Number three, the editorial blamed Israel and America for the deaths in Gaza, depicting Israel as the aggressor and responsible for the formation of Hamas, the terrorist group, which would be the same as blaming Americans for killing Nazis during World War II. Number four, the editorial omitted the history of Israel as recorded in the New Testament of the Christian Bible and wrote completely false information about the land of Israel and Palestine and who actually holds the deeds to the land. Number five, the editorial was written from a biased perspective of sympathy towards Islam, towards the Arab nation, and condemnation of Israel, Britain, America, and Western influences. And finally, and ironically, the editorial has a tone and perspective that colonizers are the bad guys. The Palos Verdes High School and School District are built on top of stolen land, just for the record. They once belonged to Chumash and the Tongva tribes. So should we begin to question whose land the author of the editorial and the kids at Palos Verdes are actually living on? Should we go find the Chumash and the Tongva and give them back our land? Because that's what's suggested in this editorial. Obviously, we don't want to do that. Nobody's going to do that. So we need to honor who owns the land now. So let's get into what's wrong with editorial line by line for the purpose of learning. In the first line, the author writes, quote, The question of Palestine stands as one of the most enduring and contentious issues of the 21st century, stretching back to the 1940s. That is false. The true answer is the question of Palestine stands as one of the most enduring and contentious issues dating back for thousands of years. For thousands of years, Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people have all been fighting each other for land, for power, for money, and for world domination. And before the monotheistic religion folks took over, they were fighting the pagans and the Vikings. Call it the human condition. We've been at war for a long time. The question of Palestine actually appears at least 8 times in 8 verses of the Hebrew Concordance of the King James Bible. The King James Bible was published in 1611. The term Palestine is used in the Old Testament to describe the southwestern coastal area of Israel, which at the time, thousands of years before Jesus, Palestine was occupied by the Philistines. Palestine is the central backdrop to both Christianity and in the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible was finished at least 400 years before Jesus, the Messiah, was born. So it's pretty old. Scholars believe the Hebrew Bible was originally started to be written down and recorded around 1400 BCE. Palestine is often referred to throughout scriptures as the Promised Land, and the scriptures say God promised the land to the Israelites, also known as the Jewish people. So, despite the author's claim, the question of Palestine stands as one of the most enduring and contentious issues for the last 3,000 years or more. The second line reads, "The land of Israel, Palestine, historically has been embroiled in conflict." That is very true. The next part reads, "In regards to the conflict, owing much of its turmoil to Jerusalem." See, again, this is the creation of enemy images, and that is false. The conflict is far more complicated. The editorial goes on, stating Christians and the Muslims blamed Western arrogance for the migration of Jews. The author refers to Israel as a country, listen to this, that transcended its origins as a British miscalculation. Wow. So it sounds like Israel's a mistake? What does that even mean? It sounds like she's saying Israel has grown too powerful and it's all Britain's fault. The editorial states, quote, "The United States funneled a grand total of $3 billion annually in the country, 99.7% of which is dedicated to Israel's military." Here she's blaming the U.S. And the editorial goes on to say, "The United Nations has condemned Israel 83 times. The editorial omits, because it's not relevant to the picture that and perspective that Israel and America are the bad guys, but America, as of mid-2025, committed over $118 billion to Ukraine, and $65 billion of that was for military aid. The U.S. provided over $73 billion to Afghanistan, beginning between 2001 and 2020. In 2023, according to U.S. News, America gave Jordan $1.7 billion, Egypt $1.5 billion, Ethiopia $1.5 billion, Somalia $1.2 billion, Nigeria $1 billion, and yet the editorial singles out only the funding that America has given to Israel to form the perspective that America is at fault for the deaths in Gaza because of the money we have given to Israel. So the problem is, if you don't know about all this other funding, you don't know that her perspective is biased and skewed. And so for the people that do know, it appears as anti-Semitic. Because why else would you only single out the money that America has given to Israel, to blame Israel for the issues in Gaza? And why would you not include the amount of money that we spend all over the world? Though the editorial presents a perspective that Western influences are the bad guys, the truth is Americans voted for Donald Trump, And from day one of his presidency, he has tried to negotiate peace deals between Israel, Hamas, and many Arab and Muslim countries. That's why you see him shaking hands with the Saudi prince and inviting everyone over for what appears to be the Last Supper to break bread. He's trying to make peace and negotiate deals, but as any soldier who has ever served in Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, the West Bank, or been to Gaza, or as they call the sandbox, it's really hard to make peace with someone wearing a suicide bomb or pointing a gun at your head and chanting "Death to America." The editorial, "Whose land is it anyway?" is naive and demonstrates an allegiance not to America, but to globalization and to the United Nations rather than the United States of America. The deeper issue here is the editorial lacks love and pride for the freedom we have in America and how we obtained it through many, many wars. I will conclude with this. After rereading the editorial several times, though it's naive, misguided, and fictitious, it's important to remember it was written by a kid. And for whatever reason, this editorial was published. There was an issue of gross oversight by the school district, the staff, and the editorial board, and they have all admitted, except for the student who still has it published, that it was wrong. The principal at Palos Verdes High School especially has apologized multiple times, offered for money back for the yearbooks, and she was devastated that this happened and it hurt so many people. And as for me, honestly, I have to tell you, I slept through history class, and initially I didn't know what was so wrong about the editorial until I took the time to listen and to learn. And so the saying goes, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it, and perhaps Charlie Kirk was right, that we are at a turning point, and the only way we can fix what is broken is to get the foreign influences out of our public education system and to remind people there is no room for Jewish hatred in our schools and in our community, and we will not tolerate it or let it stand. And so we need to educate people so they can recognize anti-Semitism in the same way we recognize racism and say it's wrong. Because anti-Semitism is a shapeshifter, and it does come disguised in many forms, but what it ultimately is hostility towards Israel, hatred of Jewish people, and there is no room for hate here. I will leave you with the author's final comments. She wrote, quote, "This is a cry to humanity to end war." We can all hopefully agree her intentions were good, though her content was not. And sadly, as for us, we have no control over what's happening in the Middle East. No amount of protests here will fix what's broken there. All we can do is pray and be the change we want to see. Let us pray for peace. Dear God, please wash away the hatred in human hearts, replace bitterness with love, heal the wounds of the brokenhearted, transform anger to compassion, and in Jesus' holy name, let the blind see and the deaf hear, give the wisdom to the ignorant, and courage to the pure of heart to speak truth over the lies. And God, in your holy name, please protect and bless this land that we love. God bless the USA.